So, it's October 2021, covered about, and your partner you've known since childhood has suddenly announced he's not going to marry you. Well, there's still school, where you're a teacher during the day, and then there's coming home to your flat in the evening. It's quite a good, decent flat. It's in the Salford Quays area of Greater Manchester, UK, an area that has been transformed from dockland to residential, commercial, and entertainment use. The BBC and other media companies are there. Your flat is quite close to the bridge over the end of the Manchester Ship Canal, which is formed from the River Irwell just a little upstream, linking Salford to the Trafford district. You graduated from the John Moores University in Liverpool with a degree in sports science in 2016, after which you took a course enabling you to teach mathematics, which you did very successfully for a number of years, well liked by the pupils, if the staff felt a little passed over. In keeping with your degree, you are very fit and have an excellent knowledge of nutrition. In your flat, that you like to keep quite neatly, you've no doubt got your TV and internet access. But, of course, you will tend to think about your social life, friends, and family. Until recently, you've been thinking about getting married and starting a family. You could make an excellent mother. You have a good, secure job, a nice home, would know how to keep kids fit and healthy, would know how to provide them with a very good education. Perhaps you could search on the internet for another mate. Maybe, despite covered, you could go to clubs, bars or sports bars to find a mate. Thinking of such things, your mind wanders to the lads at school. They like to hit on you even though they're only 15 or even younger. They think you're racy, well fit, and call you Bunderbecky. You like to feel liked by them. Actually, since they rather profoundly reside in the more romantic side of your thoughts, it might be as well to explore your relationship with them if they continue with their attentions towards you. You will then at least know how to tell any potential mate you find about them. At school, in class, there's again one of them, jokingly, or not so jokingly, asking for your telephone number. Rules are against it, but you decide to set him, and the others, a maths question, not too difficult, one they should be able to solve, but one that nonetheless requires some effort, that will provide them with the last digit of your telephone number, the only one you have not already supplied them with. By the end of the lunch break, at least one of them has your full number. At least one of them calls you, and with one you build up quite intense chats, both on the phone and on Snapchat. He is sexually mature, beginning to know how to handle himself, and no dim student. Neither of you really holds anything back from each other, and you decide to invite him to your home, fully outside the sphere of school. Unfortunately, he has to fib to his mum where he's going to get out the house, but well, he's got to form his own life. You pick him up from somewhere convenient in your small, new Audi, and you set off together. You make sure your relationship is without limits, suggesting that he might satisfy you that evening. Well, of course, he knows there is something in law about something called the age of consent whereby he should be over 16 to attempt such a thing, and makes the point. But you feel something along the lines of what is a man, if not what he truly feels. You drive together to the Trafford shopping centre so that you can buy him something to seal, or fully open, with our private relationship. The Gucci belt chosen turns out to be rather expensive, but hey, what the heck. Eventually, you return together to your flat, a private residential property, of course, where you spend the night together. But next morning at school, your young gallant cannot stop others taking hold of where he had been the previous night and details true or false of what went on. An abuse agency is telephoned and then the police. His mother, also called, drives, whether or not safe emotionally to do so or for the tears affecting her vision, to the school, in her car. That evening, regardless of your right to privacy, the police essentially demand entry when you open your flat door to them, arrest you, and take you off in some caged vehicle to a police station. You are ultimately released on police bail on the condition you do not meet with young people under the age of 18. You are also suspended from your teaching position at school. When you got back to your flat, you had first needed some sleep. Reawakening, your mind brings the events that had happened together, and your blood begins to boil. Who the hell are they to dictate to me whom I wish to be friends with? Early the next year, you started a relationship with another 15-year-old, a friend of the one you had spent the night with, perhaps. You became pregnant by the second boy in March 2023. You were rearrested and imprisoned until November that year to have your baby. In January 2024, you had that baby, but it was taken away from you after 24 hours. In July 2024, you were sentenced to 6.5 years imprisonment. In the dock, you needed to find something to hold on to as a cataplectic fit took hold of your body while tears blinded you.
Now let's take a look at the law. As mentioned in Rebecca's story, there is something called the age of consent. This is the age at which it is thought a person is capable of knowing whether they want sexual contact with someone or not. If you cannot do that, it is held you should not want to have sex. It is therefore the age below which you should not have sex, and laws make it illegal for you to do so. You can see from the map that this age varies from country to country. What will also vary from one country to another is how they look at a relationship between an adult in a position of trust and a minor. A person in a position of trust is one who has a controlling influence, like carers in care homes for children or orphanages. It could also be a teacher, particularly, say, a housemaster in a boarding school, even teachers at day schools, though in this latter case one should perhaps look very closely at the relationship. Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights is, as you may see, about the right to privacy. This extends to whom you may or may not form relationships with. The European Court has warned that countries should not be too authoritarian when it comes to underage, i.e. below the age of consent, and teenagers. If a strong relationship exists with an underage person, sex within that relationship should not be denied. The main concern should be that it does not lead to an unwanted pregnancy, or that an older person may coerce or manipulate the underage person. The Sexual Offences Act 2013. Section 9 states that it is unlawful for a person A to touch another person B, where the touching is sexual and intentional and person B is under the age of consent. So, it is unlawful under this act for a 28-year-old person to kiss or cuddle a 15-year-old. The Act in Section 9 then goes on to say that there is a higher penalty if that touching involves penetration of A by B, where A is female and B is male. And here it may be said that the English is unclear. Clearly, if A rise B, that is lowers herself onto B's member, she touches him intentionally in an act of penetration. However, what about the more common situation where the act of penetration is more nearly wholly performed by the male? To say that A has such power over B's actions would tend to the megalomaniacal. In all probability, the Act has not been written to clearly indicate that which it intends to prohibit. Section 16 deal with the previously discussed case of a person in a position of trust. Section 13 that an underage person can also act unlawfully in the ways described for adults in Section 9.
Before considering Rebecca Joynes' case, let's consider the general procedure at the beginning of a jury trial. The jury trial stems from Magna Carta, the document 25 barons had King John recognize in the 13th century. It states in Latin, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned, except by the lawful judgment of his equals, or by the law of the land." Now a law has been passed that states that jurors should not personally research a case. At the time of the Dora Dallas case in 2012, one young lawyer or student lawyer suggested this might include reading up the law relevant to the case. Why a juror should not read what he might be assumed to know, but may well not, was not explained. What's particularly pertinent here is that before a trial, jurors are required to sign a document saying that they understand they must not research a case. Thus, not only is Magna Carta breached, but the Crown, acting as both judge and prosecutor, is already acting authoritatively towards the jury for what is supposed to be going to be an unbiased trial. Maybe it's time the barons revisited the king. It might also be pointed out that courts may exclude members of the general public direct where members of the public may sit relative to the jury, perhaps. Something to consider where there are avid supporters of one side of the case. Now to the swearing in of the defendant and witnesses. The Bible still being used, it surely emphasizes the tenets and beliefs of the Christian religion in what should surely be a secular court of law. Furthermore, the Bible says do not swear an oath at all. Just what is this fiasco? Do ye plead guilty or not guilty? Since guilty is a word of unknown etymology, one might well answer one does not understand the question. Taking it to mean to feel shame or admit that you are morally owing to society, you might have well done what is described to you and still be not guilty. Well, all this, and what happens if you try to point any of it out? You are in contempt of court. Your wasting of the court's time will get you extra jail time. So to the Rebecca Joynes case in May 2024. We have a court primed towards the state religion, and staunchly likely to believe the laws passed by the country's government are quite sufficient without any human rights nonsense. Outside the court and surrounding areas, hate pervades. Whether it's hatred of mathematics, hatred of the daughter of a small business owner in a red wall city, or young male hatred of an attractive woman's power over them, it's hard to tell, but there's no doubt it's there.
Hope you get slammed! Come on then!
As for inside the courtroom, here is nothing in any of the media reports of any reference whatsoever to Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. There is nothing whatsoever as to whether the action is in the national interests. The state prosecutor is a barrister by the name of Mr. Joseph Allman. One of his earliest questions is, when an adult has an inappropriate relationship with a child of 13, 14, 15, that's the adult's responsibility, nothing to do with the child being provocative or making the first move or trying to get the adult's number, is it? This is leading in that it is trying to lead the defendant to a particular point of view, misleading in that a child of 13, 14, or 15 is over the age of criminal responsibility, which is 10, and it's irrelevant in that it does not relate directly to the legislation. He is also reported as saying that had Rebecca Joynes, petite described as pretty and softly spoken, been Robert Joynes, the 30-year-old man, and the complainants had been girls, it would not have been suggested to them they were up for it or the ones wanting sex, because that would have been quite obscene. The point about the reversed sex situation that should be considered is that the human female is not optimally developed physically to bring a pregnancy to term until she is about 20, if not a little older. So putting aside the possibility Mr. Allman has a particular liking for teenage girls, it must be that he was working towards a tough penalty for Ms. Joynes in a case about an almost arbitrarily set age criterion. It's also conceivable that equality of the sexes in sexual offences cases might prove mediating for the adventures or misadventures of one or more royals. The media report no discussion of the intricacies of the law, that the jury were instructed in any way to consider carefully the wording of the law. It is to be presumed that they believed that kissing and cuddling and sexual intercourse took place, and that the adult, Rebecca Joynes, was a teacher of the minor she spent the night with. In her sentencing on 4 July 2024, Judge Kate Cornell was intent on making out that Ms. Joynes was intent on drawing the lads to her flat, that they arrived there solely by her will. She may have done this to avoid legal action against the boys. It may have been the result of her own character, thought to be inclined to strong leadership. Perhaps it being her first case as a judge, she did not feel secure enough to lay the case aside. Arrogant and morally dubious as we can all be, it is difficult to see how her trial could have taken place in a more balanced and rational way. The fact is that a young, thoroughly pleasant, healthy, academically competent woman has been subjected to and incarcerated by those of lower character. One can but hope that she has good access to the prison library and exercise facilities, and not being told her mathematical ability must be up to putting 6 washers in a plastic pouch and put to do it day in day out. Do we need to remember the imprisonment of Kylie Moore Gilbert in Iran when she said that your own mind becomes your own worst enemy? Is Rebecca any better off than the motorcycle spies in Iran?